Welcome back, friends. Today we're going to be taking a deep look at this coffee grinder, and I think we have an interesting video in store today. Now this is the Eureka Mignon Oro single dose, and I know it's a mouthful of a name. Now this grinder has been very anticipated and hyped, and this anticipation is birthed in what it claims to be. You see, it's a grinder from a popular Italian manufacturer in Eureka with impressive specs combating some other very popular home grinders. It claims to be low retention with 65mm flat burrs using Eureka's silent technology, Italian craftsmanship, readily available inventory, and ultimately a direct competitor to the Niche Zero. So let's talk about that. Does this grinder actually make the decision of purchasing a high quality, low retention home grinder easier or more difficult? And does it compare to the Niche or even the DF64? Now, hopefully by the end of today's video, I'll help you answer these questions and also share my honest experiences, because I know so many of you are curious on this. And so this video, taken a long time to make it so that I don't miss any points. So while I did pay full price for this grinder from a local retailer in Canada called I Drink Coffee, the store owner decided to send it to me in exchange for providing honest and truthful feedback that they could share with Eureka as a retailer. Now, this was not expected or even asked for, and honestly, they did so before I could even say no. But since I'm truthfully grateful for this act of kindness, I'll leave a link to their shop down in the description below as an option. It's not an affiliate link and I get nothing for you using it, but it's there. Also, I'll be making a donation to the charity WaterAid, who helps families around the world attain clean drinking water with the money I would have spent on this grinder otherwise. Now, I was honestly hoping today I would come here and name this my new favorite single dosing grinder, because I loved my experience with the Special Leader over the years. It had charm and ease of use with good results in the cup, but it wasn't perfect. It had its flaws and quirks. And while I do enjoy this grinder, it has some interesting design choices and quirks that I think you should know about. Choices that may make or break your decision on this grinder. Now, before we dive into this, if you're able, it would truly honestly make my day if you take 2 seconds to click that like button down below, hit the subscribe button and all of those things. It would help this channel more than you can even imagine. And because I'm stupid curious, in the comments down below, let me know if you weigh out your coffee or not. Like, just write, I use a scale, Kyle, or I don't use a scale. I'm really curious on those results. Now, let's brew some coffee. Now, I want to tell you about the coffee that I'm actually brewing today. This is a coffee from an Irish roaster called Cloud Picker. And I actually got this with the sponsor of today's video, which is Standart magazine. Now, I want to talk to you about Standart because this is a product I really love, and I think too many people are sleeping on this. And this is a magazine all about specialty coffee. Not only is it a piece of art that'll make any coffee table or coffee bar look even better, it's got fantastic articles. And one of the articles I'm reading right now in Standart's newest 25th issue is about water alkalinity from Scott Rowsell. Now, first off, where can you just get a book and open it up and see beautiful articles month after month from fantastic artists like Scott Rowsell? Now, this one, Scott's talking about the water chemistry in your coffee and its important steps to making the most out of your coffee. And for those who know, I'm passionate about this topic. If you're interested, if you want to check out Standart magazine, not only do you get this every quarter of the year, you also get coffee with every issue from a roaster around the world. Now, if you're interested in checking this out, use the link in the top of the description down below, or go to standartmag.com/Kyle. And not only will you be able to sign up for this magazine, you'll get free international shipping, and it will support this channel. Okay, well, let's start off what I love about the Eureka and then maybe what I don't. And there's a lot to talk about in this video. First off, I really like the cups that this grinder produces. I've seen some online reviewing this grinder and not even talking about the coffee that it creates. And in my opinion, that's one of the most important factors. Now, honestly, the coffee it creates reminds me of when I first fell in love with espresso. You know, the texture, the flavors, it's that classic flapper espresso profile that many of us have come to love over the years. It's comforting, not the best espresso I've ever had, but it's enjoyable. Even the sound of this grinder, it's familiar. No, it's not a pleasant sound, and it's not even quiet. Like, it's much louder than their other grinders, but for me, this might be a very personal thing, and if you don't agree, that's totally fair. And in fact, I'd love to know what you think down in the comments below. But when I hear this grinder, it puts a smile on my face. It just reminds me of the hours I've spent in cafes over my life, and it's familiar in that sense. Now, Eureka is a brand that is incredibly popular in the espresso community. They've been creating grinders for cafes like the 𝙇𝙤𝙣 and the Olympus for some time, and more recently their Mignon series is one that became very popular with home brewers. Now, their Specialita only a few years ago became their flagship home grinder that became immensely popular with its 55mm flat burst, touchscreen, and lower retention that at the time hadn't really been seen at that price range. And so the Oro seems to be Eureka's take on the next evolution of their Mignon series, especially from that Specialita. You know, they're adding larger 65mm burrs and focusing on eliminating retention altogether with the bellows and angular design. Then they get rid of the touchscreen and other features that we just don't care about as single dose users. So the burr in the Oro by no means is a modern unimodal style burr with incredible high particle uniformity and tight peak in its distribution of grinds, but it's good. It creates familiar, well-textured shots that have decently good clarity while having a desirable texture and balanced complexity to complement its profile for an overall comfortable and familiar espresso. And I think it's a profile that many will enjoy, but if you're searching for high clarity burrs with something more similar to like the DF64 or even like the SSP unimodals, these 65mm diamond inside burrs are not that, but again, for most, I actually think it's probably a good thing. And some of you might be wondering if you can add SSP burrs to this grinder. And guys, I tried, but the upper burr carrier is just a hair too small. So unless you're willing to mod this grinder, you're unable to do that. Now, I brewed quite a few filter coffees with this too, and I'd say it does a pretty good job. I'd say it does a better job than most, especially cheaper conical grinders, at creating a good cup of filter coffee. It offers enough complexity for most to enjoy this, but not too much where the brews are overly muddy and undistinguished. Cups aren't as muddy as something like the Niche Zero, and it does a better job than most conical burrs. Again, not a unimodal style where the peak uniformity is high and so there's a lot of clarity, but good for the occasional pour over. And I think occasional is an important statement because I wouldn't say swapping between brew methods from espresso to filter has been an enjoyable experience, and I was really hoping it would. On the Oro, I find myself grinding for espresso at 0.3 to 0.5 turns from the burrs touching, and at filter it's about 1 to 1.5 turns, sometimes more or less than that. Now, depending on your coffee and brew method, this can vary, but it's just not as enjoyable of an experience as where you have the Niche or the DF where it's one giant dial and you can see filter to espresso on one turn. Unfortunately, with multiple turns of the dial, you really can't tell where you're at. There's no way to distinguish how many turns of the dial you're at. It's just not as enjoyable of experience as you use daily for swapping between filter brew methods, and definitely not as enjoyable in a commercial setting where you have multiple baristas brewing on one grinder. If this is an issue, and if Eureka is watching this, of the dial being too small to make this possible, I know some models they have it in one turn, but then you can't make those micro adjustments. If that's the issue, then I think it might be time for Eureka to reevaluate their adjustment system in the near future. And one more positive before we dive into things that I'm really not a huge fan of, I love how this grinder looks. It's not a unit that will turn heads or be a brew bar centerpiece in my opinion, but aesthetically I like what Eureka has done here. They've essentially took a Niche Zero and made it with Mignon parts. Visually, I think it's like an Italian niche. And for me, it's nice, but I'd actually love to know what you think down below. Because based on those I've asked before filming this video, some love it and some just absolutely don't. And with all of their Mignons, this is a full metal build with very minimal plastics, and this model has some wood accents. I don't love the lid, it feels a little flimsy, but the wood catch tray isn't bad. And I do love that dosing cup. I think it's a nice touch, and as I mentioned, it will fit on most 58mm baskets. I think it was a wise decision with going with a dosing basket. But I do have some fair concerns that I think you should know about if you're looking at this grinder. You see, my frustrations with the Mignon single dose isn't in the coffee that it produces. Eureka's always done a pretty good job at that, but instead it's their workflow, certain design choices, and certain quality concerns. So let's talk about them. Now, once I received this grinder, I actually did a live unboxing, and shortly after I finished the unboxing, I noticed that the burrs were chirping even when not on the touching point of the burrs. Which, by the way, on my model, it's a 9, not a 0, but not a huge deal. It was almost as if they were like rubbing against the sidewalls of the grind chamber or hitting something very lightly. And after taking my grinder apart and doing some digging, it seemed my burrs were misaligned. So after aligning them, the noises, they disappeared. So they were never very concerning, but as somebody who's had a lot of experience with coffee grinders, it was something I noticed right away. I also noticed that this motor has a fairly noticeable vibration. It's actually really hard not to notice because my table vibrates when grinding coffee. And it almost seems like the angle of this grinder and the supports and bracing of the motor leads to the vibrations that we're experiencing. But I'm no engineer. This also could be why I'm hearing those noises in the grind chamber before alignment. It could just be resulting in an unaligned axle. I don't know, there could be so many variables here. But after scattering the internet, it seems I'm not alone in this sentiment. Dozens of others are voicing their initial concerns upon receiving the single dose and vibrating motors. And if you're one of them, please let me know down in the comments below. But let's talk about the Mignon's retention, as it claims to be a single dosing grinder with low retention, so I'd expect it to compete with the niche 0 or at least be less than 0.5 grams retained, especially since it uses a bellows system. Well, after weeks of testing, cleaning, weighing, and grinding, it seems the single dose is a low retention grinder, but it has a concerning flaw in its design. As I mentioned earlier, Eureka has included their blow-up system bellows to push out excess grounds to reduce retention. When I first got the grinder, there were no issues with this and it pushed coffee out as you'd expect it to, but then it didn't. And after a few days of use, the bellows started blowing nothing out of the grind chamber. So it made me very curious. And upon inspecting the grinder and pulling apart the burrs, it seems the exit point from the grind chamber was clogged with about 1.5 grams of coffee, or in other words, retention. Now, this was by no means a flaw of the grinder chamber, but rather due to the little metal forks installed just outside of the grind chamber exit to help with static and break any clumps in their coffee grinds. Now, Eureka calls it their ACE system, and this little metal clump crusher is what caused coffee to build up and block the bellows from blowing out any coffee retained. So I decided to disassemble the grinder and remove the clump crusher. Easier than it sounds, by the way. Eureka does a pretty good job of designing these for access, for cleaning, and once I removed it, it solved all the issues of the bellows being clogged, and coffee was pushed out with ease with a couple puffs of the bellows. Annoying that I had to do this, but it fixed the retention issues. But removing this clump crusher led me to a new issue: static, and a lot of it. Now, I live in Ottawa, Canada, and it's fairly cold here. You know, today it's minus 20 outside, and we have 2 feet of snow. That leads to some incredibly dry climates, which is only to make static more of an issue with grinding coffee. But honestly, without spurts of water on my beans before grinding, or RDT, the Ross droplet technique, the static was just way too annoying. Even with RDT, static was an issue, but much more controllable. Now, I've tried bending those little forks back to kind of have like a hybrid solution. And while this helped with static, it wasn't a perfect solution, but rather more of like a temporary fix. So if I'm truly honest, this for me is disappointing. It's probably something that I'd be able to deal with personally, and I'd rather have a messy grinder than one with a lot of retention. Let me know if you agree. But this has never been an issue for my niche or even the Lagome Mini. And yes, I know these grinders are conical burrs instead of flat burrs, but I really love my experience with the Specialita. It felt polished and perfected for its time. And this, it just feels different. And from a larger grinder manufacturers with lots of experience in making quality grinders, I'd personally expect a polished experience from the single dose. But we're not done. Let's elaborate on some more other findings. You see, the metal chute stopper is a great idea, and a way they've eliminated popcorning while having a bellows. Huge props there, Eureka. But the metal piece itself is sharp on the edges, and it doesn't spin smoothly like you'd expect from a $1,000 grinder. Now, the front fascia is taken from other Mignons, but Eureka has left the spots where you'd engage the grinder, right here where you'd tap the port filter to engage the motor. And they've also left the fork holders there. Now, both of those are rendered useless because it's just a dose cup, but it's still there. something I just wouldn't expect from a grinder of this price range. But let's shift focuses here and answer the question many of you are pondering. How does it compare to the Niche Zero? Now, despite these realities I just mentioned, I do think it still competes with the Niche Zero. That grinder is also not perfect. Now, yes, the Niche is definitely more polished in certain areas for sure. It doesn't suffer from the same build quality issues, though it does suffer from lack of supply, limited filter coffee range, and depending on your desire and preferences, it uses a conical burr set. So first, let's talk about the taste differences most important at this price range, and then we'll talk about the realities. Okay, so I just brewed some espressos with these two grinders. On this side is the Mignon single dose, and this side is the Niche. And because I know you guys love these so much, we're gonna do a blind taste test, and I'm gonna have Natasha come in here and swap these around, and then I'm gonna guess which one they are. Let's do it. This one's a lot chocolatier, a lot more textured, a lot less defined. This one has a little more vibrancy, a little more clarity. And so let me try it again. I think this one's the Niche Zero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the cup profiles they're obvious, and you know, we do have a flat burr versus a conical, and this is not something that's overhyped, and I'm working on a video to talk all about the differences in these, and really isn't that big of a deal. But in this instance, there's definitely a clear difference in taste profiles. So that Niche cup, which is actually this one here, let's swap these back. It's very textured, it's very traditional. You know, I've explained it before as like a modern take on traditional espresso. It's textured, complex, and sweet, and provides a good range of flavor, but the Eureka has a much more pronounced flavor profile when it comes to clarity. Got a whiteboard here. Teacher Kyle here. Got a whiteboard. We're gonna do some drawings today. Okay, so we're still recording? We're still recording. If this was the Oro, I'd say its profiles are kind of, you know, we have, let's say, like 3 flavors. We'll call this like coconut, cocoa nibs, and something crazy like orange, because specialty coffee people were like that. And you know, for this profile, it might be a little bit more, you know, it crosses over a little bit, it blends a little bit, you got some complexity, but overall, like, it's defined. You know, maybe this would go like this. And then the Niche, I think it'd be a lot more like, it's more blended. It doesn't have as much definition in the shot. And so I would say this one probably is a little, you know, more wavy. It's got a little bit more overlap in terms of like the flavor profiles. And so that's probably how I would describe visually. Maybe you're a visual learner like me. I don't know if that makes any sense. Let me know in the comments. But for me, like the conical burr on the Niche, it just doesn't have that oomph. For me, that initial flavor that just screams, I don't know, high quality espresso. It's very good. Like, I love the Niche. For me, I think it's, you know, it's comfortable. It's approachable. You're not going to get any big defined notes per se compared to something like a flat burr grinder. This one here, it just has a lot more clarity. Every single note, I can really kind of like pick it out just a little bit easier. It's just a little easier to define what I'm tasting. That doesn't mean this is better. This is just what I would prefer. But it's close. It's very, very close, which leads us to the other realities. The Niche is a grinder that I've grown incredibly fond of for its simplicity and ease of use. It's a workhorse, and when it comes to espresso, it's straight up, it's dummy proof. You put the coffee beans in, you turn it on, and it grinds the coffee. You know, it's very easy to clean with minimal tools. It's guaranteed low retention without having to use a bellows or any mods, and dialing in coffee is also very easy. Now, swapping between espresso and filter is an interesting topic on the Niche, as it uses one of the nicest systems to adjust the grinds that I've ever used. But until it's fully seasoned, the Niche has been known to create a lot of fines and produce muddy filter coffee. Once it's seasoned, it's definitely better. It produces only good coffee, filter coffee. It's just not great filter coffee, in my opinion. The Eureka, on the other hand, it produces really great coffee. It tastes fantastic, and it's got that Italian flair. But you're gonna need to ensure you use RDT unless you want a huge mess. Even then, it's still messy. You gotta use the bellows and possibly mod the grinder and that clump crusher out of the box to avoid retention altogether. It's really hard to keep clean, and you may need alignment out of the box for the best results. And then what about the DF64? Well, I was so intrigued when I used the Oro about the DF64 because it also has some imperfections that I went out and purchased one. And I'll be comparing the Oro to the DF64 and other single dosing grinders very soon. So be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already so you don't miss that one. Now, depending on where you're watching from in the world, the prices on these grinders may vary for shipping. Here, the Oro is $7.99 US and the niche is around $6.50 before shipping and import fees. And that DF64 can be found around $4.50. I know for some, the niche can be hard to obtain because of the shipping, an issue we'll talk about in that upcoming video. But let's summarize this. The Eureka Mignon single dose was a very anticipated coffee grinder that many were hoping would combat the niche and solve many of the quirks and issues the DF64 presented in a more premium, expensive package. But it seems Eureka hasn't been able to accomplish that. While this grinder makes great coffee and looks pretty good doing so out of the box, it doesn't do what it claims it does, low retention. Mix this in with small inconsistencies in finish and a loud and vibration heavy motor. Honestly, it kind of left me disappointed, and I was really cheering for Eureka on this one, but you guys need to know the truth. Now, if this is Eureka's first iteration on this grinder and modifications are coming, which I've heard rumors of, then I'd be happy to reevaluate at that time. But at this time of filming, the grinder just isn't what I'd hope it to be. And if you've already purchased one of these, please let me know your experiences and if they're any different than mine down below. I truly hope you enjoy your experiences, and that would actually make me smile. I think I'm gonna be sticking with my niche zero. You know, it doesn't make a better cup of coffee, but I don't have to worry about it. It just does what it's supposed to do, and it has for a couple years now. Now, if you've gotten this far in the video, well, you're my favorite. So let me know down in the comments below by writing something like, I love you, Kyle, and that'll let me know that you are the select few, and you're my favorite. Second, I just want to thank each and every one of you for watching my videos of the past year. 2021, wow, that incredible. Honestly, I didn't think it was even possible, and it means the world, and I'm beyond stoked to provide some kind of value to the specialty coffee community. I also want to give a huge special shout out to my Patreon community. They're come alongside me in this past year and supported my channel, made many of these videos even possible. So we started a Discord halfway through 2021, and this Discord is actually going to be going public in the next few weeks, in certain channels at least, and so more information on that to come. But if you're interested in joining my Patreon, I think it's as low as $1.50, and you get chances to win a lot of the gear I review, win coffee I donate monthly, and be a part of this wonderful community. And swing over to Instagram if you're not yet following me over there. I post daily content on at least my stories and some behind the scenes stuff. And TikTok if you're into that kind of thing too. I recently started that. I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing it, but that's down in the description as well. Now, guys, I love each and every single one of you. We will see you guys all in the next video. Peace. Love y'all.